Hi, it's Adam the HipNerd, and today's show and tell is part 1 of my Pentaflake Tabletop. This was my first design and first test. So, not coming out quite the way I wanted to. It's a little rough. It's creating these very thin walls, which it's not knocking out all the way. I'd like all this space to be carved out. I'm thinking maybe thicken the lines in the SVG file and try again. Ultimately though, I changed the design, making the pentagram shapes bigger and moving them away from each other to make more of a tiled appearance. I made the design oversized, then removed the shapes outside of the margins for the CNC. Then I further refined the pattern, deleting elements outside of the final circle shape. This came out much more to my liking, so it was time to remove the sled and very carefully remove the test plywood. I haven't recalibrated since I cut the final sled for the Maslow CNC. So before I get to cutting the pattern for the tabletop, I figure I should recalibrate. It certainly can't hurt. Now the cuts are so shallow that I can't even hook the tape measure on them. More Z-axis issues. Friggin' Z-axis. Okay, so I went to the hardware store and bought a whole variety of things to try and fix the Z-axis. I got this thinner washer, which allows the clip to go in, and I added this nylon tube, it's a bushing or whatever, glued it on there, and now no play in this, no play up and down, so I think this is ready to rock and roll now. Got my fingers crossed. We'll see how it goes. This time it worked, so with the calibration finally done, it was time to mount the workpiece and cut the pattern. I mounted the shims on either side of the workpiece to keep the sled from tipping near the edge, but my margins were good enough that I didn't really need them. Then I hung the sled again and let her rip. Unfortunately, Alright, so everything was going pretty good till it got about halfway, and then the Z-axis completely jammed. That's a piece of plywood down the drain. Okay, so I replaced the damaged router bit. As you can see, this one is completely, I don't know what you would call that, but it is pretty severely damaged. And I'm pretty sure that it comes from running the router at too high a speed and causing the bit to get way too hot. So I'm going to crank down the speed. I think I had it set to max, which is probably a mistake. And I'm hoping that this is what caused the Z-axis to jam. Maybe it was having trouble cutting downwards and putting a lot of pressure on this, and maybe it just like gave way. It was maybe trying to lift the whole sled up as it was cutting down. In any case, I dismantled everything, cleaned it up as best I could. I took apart this clip and it was pretty gunked up, so I cleaned that all out, put everything back together, tightened it all up. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and flip the plywood around and try on the back side as a test and go from there. The Z-axis is still a problem, so I'm going to go ahead and raise the bit by 2 millimeters. And that looks like it went up about 2 millimeters there. Now I'm going to lower it by the same amount. And that still looks like it's 2 millimeters up. Now I'm going to push on the router from the back here. And look at that. And the issue, I think, is still this is still wiggling too much. So based on some stuff I saw on the forums, I added this bungee cord to keep some downward pressure or sideways pressure, as the case may be, on the router. And doing a little Z-axis zeroing, it seemed to work a little bit better. There's maybe about a 0.5 millimeter play. Hopefully that won't be bad. I'm just gonna do a test and see how it goes. from a distance it looks really good. So here's near the end. This was the first really bad cut. Then it did these, and then it made these really long ones. Now, I have some theories as to what's going on. Looking at it edge on, you can see how the corners have little burn marks that get worse and worse as you go across. Looking at the tip of the router bit, you can see it does not look good. Also, the depth of the cut is much shallower here. I think this is more correct. And then it gets deeper and deeper as it goes here. Oh, the other thing that happened, the other thing that happened is right here, the nylon bushing that I had glued to the bottom of the clip came off. So that might have contributed to the problems. But I'm getting closer all the time. So it's time to do some research and figure out what is going on. Okay, so I'm about to try the test cut. Originally I bought these bits from Harbor Freight because the old bit, here's the old bit. As you can see, it's kind of heat damaged, and I think it's probably not good anymore. So, like I said, I bought these bits from Harbor Freight. But I got kind of cold feet because they were $8 for this set of 3 bits. It says fully heat treated shanks and bodies for durability, C3 micrograin carbide for long life and professional cut quality. But this Diablo brand from Home Depot, it's like $18. This was $8, and I just, yeah, I'll try them out sometime, but I don't think I want to try it out right now. I want the best chance of success, so I'm going with this. Hey, fully heat treated, solid, 100% solid carbide. Yeah. So there's that. The bushing is back on with really strong 2-part epoxy that I let cure overnight. So I think that should do the trick. Hopefully that won't be coming off again. Based on some comments from the forums on Maslow, it was suggested that I not use too strong of a bungee across the top of the router because it might force the router to slip out of the slot that it rides in on the housing. So I'm going to re-engineer that with some thinner bungee cord. This is the same stuff I use to tension the chain on the Maslow. So I can adjust this to a fine degree. Basically, I want it to be as strong as the force of gravity, since usually when you're using the router, you're using it upright and it's just the weight of the router pulling down on it. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to run the test cut. I'm using, hold on a second while I turn you around here. I'm using this old piece of MDF, which I cannot get in the frame entirely, but this stuff is kind of weather damaged. It's probably going to be a little soft. When I first brought it in here, it smelled like a little mildewy. I sanded the top layer off. I don't smell that mildew smell anymore, so hopefully yeah, I don't think it really matters, honestly. The only thing I'm worried about is that if it's too crumbly, it's not going to show the cuts really well, but I'm hoping it's solid enough that it's not going to be an issue. Going to get the sled back on here. Well, first I'm going to change the router bit out, get the sled back on, and run that old test cut. Here we go. The other thing I forgot to mention is that this will be a test of my hand-coded fixes to the G-code file. So yeah, hand-coded G-code. What could go wrong? Well, that super strong epoxy, I guess wasn't really super strong. Failed. How frustrating. The epoxy I used to glue this bushing on didn't stick at all to the metal. I mean, I sanded it, I cleaned it, but yeah, it's completely, Finally think I got this bushing thing fixed. What I did is I found this lock collar. I took the little set screw out of it. This has a lot more surface area to deal with than this little nylon spacer that I was using before. So this, no good. Also, I used this epoxy putty, and it dried really strong. I even used a pair of pliers to try and get this apart. It is stuck on here. This should not break off. This time it's done. I'm gonna put the sled back together. I'm gonna do this test cut. This is gonna work. Well, this is the result. I finally had a successful test cut, and all the shapes are uniform depth. They're clean. This is really good. So time to move on to do the final cut. This ends part 1. Thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe.